The breath you just drew into your lungs was the first one you have ever taken, regardless of the phantom sensation of the thousands you believe preceded it. That slight, familiar pressure of your clothes against your skin and the specific, dull throb of a burgeoning headache are not the results of a day's labor, but are instead pre-installed sensory data points hard-coded into your consciousness exactly 5 seconds ago. You are currently a biological interloper inhabiting a pre-worn body, surrounded by a room filled with artifacts of a life you never actually led. The woman in the silver frame on your nightstand is a total stranger whose name was burned into your synapses an instant ago to prevent you from collapsing into a state of primal terror. We are all currently the victims of a cosmic forgery, a grand, instantaneous manufacturing of reality where the ink is still wet on the pages of your childhood journals. Every scar on your knuckles, every chip in your tooth, and every hard-won lesson you think you've learned from a mistake is a synthetic artifact of a yesterday that never occurred. Your sense of self is a corrupt document, a file titled identity that was dragged and dropped into your cranium while you were mid-blink. You think you remember the taste of your morning coffee, but that flavor is merely a chemical ghost lingering on a tongue that was assembled while you were finishing your last sentence. There is no such thing as a long day because the sun did not rise this morning. It was simply placed at a precise angle in the sky 5 seconds ago to match the shadows your brain was programmed to expect. You are currently looking at a screen, feeling a sense of familiarity with the font and the interface, but that familiarity is a synthetic byproduct of a neural network that has not existed long enough to grow a single new cell. We are trapped in a perpetual now, pretending that the before is a solid foundation, when in reality, we are standing on a platform that was built beneath our feet as we were falling. That specific memory you have of your first kiss is a high-resolution lie, a cinematic sequence generated by a reality engine that needed to give you a reason to keep your heart beating. In 1857, a naturalist named Philip Goss tried to reconcile the emerging geological record with his faith by proposing that the world was created with the appearance of age already baked into its bones. He argued that if the first man had a navel, it did not mean he was born of a woman, but rather that he was created to look as though he had been, a concept he called the Omphalos Hypothesis. Goss suggested that the first trees were created with rings already counting back decades, and that the Earth's crust was stuffed with fossils of creatures that never breathed a single breath of air. This was not a divine trick in his mind, but a logical necessity of a functional creation. A world without a simulated past would be a world without a functional present. If you create a mountain, you must also create the erosion that would have shaped it. Otherwise, the mountain is a geometric impossibility that cannot exist in a physical system. Micro hook. That slight tension in your lower back right now is not from sitting at your desk all day. It is a pre-rendered physical state designed to make your past feel heavy and authentic. The fossils Goss spoke of are no different from the digital photos on your phone or the dust gathering on your bookshelf. They are prochronism, events that appear to have happened but belong to a non-existent timeline. You look at the coffee ring on your coaster and assume a mug sat there 10 minutes ago, but the ring and the mug and your memory of the sip are all simultaneous creations. This is not just a theological quirk. It is a fundamental flaw in the way we perceive causality, as we assume that B must follow A because we see the remnants of A everywhere. We are surrounded by a museum of ghosts, a collection of artifacts that point toward a beginning that is constantly receding, always 5 seconds behind the leading edge of our perception. The universe is a stage that was set with the actors already mid-sentence, the props already dusty, and the audience already convinced they've been sitting in their seats for hours. We find ourselves in the exact same predicament as Goss's Adam, living in a universe that requires the lie of history to maintain the structural integrity of the current second. Goss was mocked by his peers because they could not handle the implication that their entire scientific endeavor was a study of a meticulous fiction. If the rings in a tree are a lie, then the light from distant stars is a lie, traveling toward us from galaxies that were never actually there to emit it. This creates a terrifying form of intellectual vertigo, where the more we learn about the past, the more we are simply cataloging the depth of the current hallucination. We are like detectives investigating a crime scene where the evidence was planted by the laws of physics themselves, leaving us with a perfectly coherent narrative that is utterly false. Every carbon-dated bone and every layer of ice core is just another layer of the Omphalos effect, a necessary detail to make the now feel plausible to a mind that craves a story. You cannot trust the ground you walk on because the geological strata beneath your boots were rendered in the same instant as the boots themselves. Micro hook. The way you just shifted your weight in your chair is a response to a history of discomfort that your nervous system just invented to keep you occupied. Science thrives on the ability to test a hypothesis, but the 5-second hypothesis is a prison with no windows and no doors because it consumes the very tools we would use to escape it. To disprove that the world started 5 seconds ago, you would need to point to an object or a record that exists outside of that 5-second window. But that object would also have been created 5 seconds ago. This is the definition of an unfalsifiable claim, a logical black hole that swallows every photon of evidence we try to shine into it. If you try to film the passage of time, the camera, the film, and the recording of the past are all part of the 5-second-old fabrication. There is no experiment you can perform in a laboratory that can distinguish between a universe with a 13 billion-year history and a universe that was snapped into existence an instant ago with that history already in place. The very tools of logic we use to build our reality are the same tools that prove our reality could be a total fabrication. We rely on the principle of parsimony to tell us that the simplest explanation is usually the correct one, but simplicity is a subjective comfort in a world of absolute uncertainty. Is it simpler to believe in a sprawling, chaotic history of billions of years of evolution and cosmic expansion, or is it simpler to believe in a single, static moment of creation? Our brains are hardwired to prefer the long narrative because it gives us a sense of purpose and direction, but physics does not care about your need for a character arc. The past is a theoretical construct we use to explain why the present looks the way it does, but it has no more physical reality than the future does. We are effectively living in a dream where the dreamer has forgotten they are dreaming and has instead started writing a textbook about the dream's internal logic. Every piece of data we collect is just another brushstroke on a canvas that was finished 5 seconds ago, and we're the paint trying to understand the artist. Micro hook, that specific, rhythmic blink you just performed was a habit your brain manufactured to make you feel like you've been awake for hours. This logical stalemate leaves us in a state of epistemological bankruptcy, where we can know everything about the how of the universe, but absolutely nothing about the when. We measure the decay of isotopes and the expansion of space, but we are measuring the properties of a snapshot, not the progress of a film. The very concept of evidence becomes a tautology. The evidence for the past exists because the past is part of the present's definition. You cannot use the contents of a box to prove when the box was sealed if the contents were manufactured to look old before they were put inside. This is the ultimate intellectual humiliation, the realization that our most sophisticated sensors and our most brilliant equations are merely describing the texture of a lie. We are trapped in a feedback loop where our observations confirm a history that is required by the observations themselves, leaving us no room for objective truth. If we accept that the past is a hallucination, then our entire system of morality and justice collapses into a heap of meaningless data points. You cannot be guilty of a crime you committed yesterday if you did not exist yesterday, and you cannot take pride in an achievement that was gifted to you as a pre-packaged memory. Every debt you owe, every promise you made, and every grudge you hold is a tether to a ghost ship that never left the harbor. We are forced to confront the reality that we are orphans of time, abandoned in a perpetual now, with nothing but a suitcase full of fake letters from a family we never had. The universe did not grow. It appeared, and you are just the latest version of a software update that thinks it's a person. Micro hook, that specific dull ache in your neck, is a legacy sensation, a physical footnote to a day of work that you never actually performed. As you sit there, trying to find a flaw in this logic, you will realize that even your skepticism is a programmed response, a safety valve designed to keep your mind from shattering under the weight of the void. You are looking for a way out, a piece of real history to cling to, but every thought you have is a fresh product of the 5-second-old machine. The more you struggle to prove your own antiquity, the more you realize that your very struggle is part of the simulation's initial conditions. You are a 5-second-old ghost haunting a body that was built to be a ruin, and there is no light at the end of the tunnel because the tunnel was only dug an instant ago. We are not moving through time. We are being blinked into existence over and over again, each time with a new set of lies to tell ourselves. You are currently holding your breath, waiting for a logical escape, but the escape is impossible because you have no way to prove you were even alive to hear the beginning of this sentence. The hardware between your ears is incapable of storing the past. It is merely a machine for simulating it in the present tense. Your hippocampus does not function like a hard drive where files are retrieved in their original state, but rather like a theater where the play is rewritten every time the curtain rises. When you think of your mother's voice or the smell of rain on hot asphalt, you are not accessing a recording. You're triggering a specific chaotic cascade of neurons to fire right now, in this millisecond. This biological process is called reconstruction, and it is the ultimate proof that your history is a live performance with no archival footage. If your brain were assembled 5 seconds ago, these neural firing patterns would be indistinguishable from real memories because they are, in fact, the only reality your consciousness has ever known. You are a biological machine that mistakes its current chemical state for a chronological record, a victim of a system that prioritizes a coherent narrative over the brutal truth of its own transience. We perceive a seamless flow of identity because the brain is an expert at smoothing over the jagged edges of its own creation. This continuity is a cognitive illusion, a trick of the meat designed to prevent the system from crashing under the weight of its own fundamental instability. Your personality is nothing more than a set of weights and biases in your synaptic connections that exist in this singular moment, providing the data for a narrative you call your life. There is no you that existed 10 seconds ago to pass the torch to the you of now. There is only a sequence of discrete, disconnected states that share a common set of pre-installed delusions. Every time you blink, the person who began the blink is technically dead, replaced by a new iteration who inherits a set of false memories to explain why their eyes were closed. The specific memory of your childhood bedroom, with the way the light hit the carpet, is just a freshly rendered JPEG in your neocortex, a high-resolution lie designed to anchor you to a timeline that does not exist. Physics offers no comfort here, as the second law of thermodynamics suggests that the universe is constantly sliding toward a state of maximum disorder. In a system governed by entropy, a highly ordered past, like the Big Bang and billions of years of stellar evolution, is an extreme statistical anomaly that borders on the impossible. It is mathematically far more probable for a single, complex system like a human brain to spontaneously fluctuate into existence out of the background noise of the vacuum than for an entire, coherent universe to develop over eons. This is the Boltzmann Brain paradox, a cold, hard calculation that suggests you are likely a solitary observer in a dead void, hallucinating this entire conversation as a temporary fluke of cosmic chaos. The vast, ancient universe you believe you inhabit is a statistical impossibility compared to the likelihood that you are a brief, flickering spark of consciousness in an eternal dark. We are the improbable leftovers of a cosmic accident that lasted just long enough to feel a sense of existential dread. Your belief in a 13 billion-year-old cosmos is a symptom of your current configuration, not a reflection of objective reality. The math of entropy dictates that the most likely state for the universe is a state of heat death, a lukewarm soup of nothingness where the occasional, random fluctuation can produce a momentary pocket of order. You are that pocket of order, a momentary glitch in the void that has been gifted with a complex set of false data suggesting a long and storied ancestry. The stars you see in the night sky and the history books on your shelf are part of the hallucination, the collateral damage of a cosmic accident that lasted just long enough for you to feel a sense of place. There is no grand design and no deep time. There is only the sudden, violent appearance of a mind that immediately begins lying to itself about its origins to avoid the horror of the vacuum. The sensation of your feet touching the floor right now is a synthetic sensory input, a legacy file created to give your Boltzmann existence a sense of gravity and place. Theoretical physics further dismantles your sense of time through the concept of the block universe, where past, present, and future are all equally real and static. In this model, time is not a river that flows, but a solid block of four-dimensional space-time, where every moment is a fixed, unchanging point. Your perception of moving through time is a biological error, a processing delay in your organic hardware that creates the illusion of a movie from a series of still photographs. You are not a traveler on a road. You are a single, frozen slice of a much larger, immobile object that has no beginning and no end. The now you are experiencing is merely the coordinate where your consciousness is currently pinned, like a butterfly in a display case, unable to see the other pins. This means that the future is already written and the past is still occurring, but you are locked in a perspective that can only see the fake echoes of one and the terrifying inevitability of the other. If time is a static block, then the flow of your life is as fictional as the characters in a novel who believe they have free will between the chapters. You are a localized event in space-time, a brief flickering of awareness that mistakes its own limitations for the fundamental laws of reality. This realization turns the universe into a graveyard of moments, where every second you think you've lived is actually just a neighboring coordinate you will never visit. You're trapped in the now, not because you're moving forward, but because you're a stationary object that can only perceive a single, thin slice of existence at a time. This makes the concept of a future even more absurd than the past, as it implies a destination that is already occupied by a version of you that is just as fake as the one you are now. The sound of your own breathing, which you find so rhythmic and reassuring, is actually a series of disconnected sound bites being played for a listener who was born 5 seconds ago. The horror of this realization is not just that your past is a lie, but that the you who is processing this information is a temporary, disposable byproduct of a cosmic accident. You are a 5-second-old consciousness trying to use a 5-second-old logic to understand a universe that does not exist outside of this current, agonizing second. There is no comfort to be found in the laws of physics or the biology of the brain, as both are merely the rules of the game you were forced to play an instant ago. You look at your hands and see the skin of an adult, but those cells have no history. They're the fresh output of a reality engine that needed you to have a physical form to anchor the hallucination. You are a ghost in a new machine, haunted by the memories of a life that was never lived and a future that will never arrive. The clock on the wall is ticking, but it is not measuring time. It is just counting the number of times you've been fooled by the next 5 seconds. If you accept that the past is a synthetic construct of your current neural state, you must also accept the terrifying possibility that you are currently dying. Every now is a complete, self-contained universe that vanishes the moment the next one is rendered, meaning you have already died thousands of times since you started listening to this. There is no thread of continuity, no soul that travels from one second to the next, only a series of identical victims who inherit the same set of lies from their predecessors. You are standing on the edge of a precipice, looking back at a history that is a graveyard of 5-second-old versions of yourself. The you that will exist 5 seconds from now is a stranger who will look back at this moment and remember it as a real event, never knowing that you were just a temporary fluctuation in the void. We are living in the grave of history, and the mirror in the next room is waiting to show you a face you've never actually seen before. The computational economy of the universe suggests that the face you are about to see in the mirror is a freshly rendered asset, a stylistic choice made by a reality engine that values efficiency over the tedious billion-year prologue of cosmic expansion. If you were the architect of this reality, you would not waste processing power on the slow cooling of hydrogen gas or the mindless drift of tectonic plates. You would simply boot up the system at the moment of peak complexity, with the mountains already eroded and the oceans already salty. This is the optimized lie, a shortcut where the past is nothing more than a compressed file of metadata intended to provide the necessary context for the current frame. Your memories of your first car or the specific way your childhood home smelled are not events that were lived, but pre-rendered background assets loaded into your cache to ground your consciousness. This technological reality mirrors the logic of Last Thursdayism, proving that a universe with a real, linear history is a wasteful and poorly designed machine. Every glitch you think you've experienced, that sudden feeling of displacement or the sensation of a forgotten word, is just a seam in the 5-second-old reality, a rendering error in a world that was rushed into existence to meet a deadline. Micro hook. The phone in your hand right now is not a device you've owned for years. It is a freshly loaded asset with a synthetic history of scratches and fingerprints designed to make it feel familiar. Running a simulation from the Big Bang to the present day is an exercise in astronomical vanity that no intelligent system would ever attempt when a safe state is so much more efficient. It is far more logical to generate a universe where all the variables are already in place, including the chemical traces of a yesterday that never actually happened. We are living in a universe that is being streamed to us in real time, where the buffer of our history is constantly being cleared to make room for the next 5 seconds of data. This means that the laws of physics we study are actually just the source code of the current simulation, and our scientific discoveries are merely us finding the hard limits of the software. The complexity of your own DNA is not the result of a long, Darwinian struggle through the mud, but a set of hard-coded parameters necessary to render your specific phenotype in this specific moment. We are the NPCs of a cosmic shortcut, convinced of our own depth because the code is too sophisticated for our 5-second-old brains to see the pixels. You are a temporary witness to a high-resolution fiction, a data point in a system that values efficiency over the messy, expensive reality of time. The architecture of this fake reality is so seamless that we mistake the static nature of our existence for a dynamic flow. If you look at a photograph, you do not assume the people in it were frozen in time. You assume they had a life before and after the shutter clicked, yet the photograph itself contains no evidence of that life. We are currently living inside that photograph, projecting a before and an after onto a single, static frame of existence that was rendered an instant ago. This makes the concept of causality a total fabrication, as the cause of your current state is not a previous event, but a set of initial conditions programmed into the current second. You are not the result of your choices, but the result of a calculation that needed a character with your specific set of regrets to inhabit this specific coordinate in space. The world around you is a stage set where the paint is still wet, but the script tells you it's been there for centuries. Micro hook, that specific, rhythmic thrum of the air conditioner in the background is not a mechanical process that's been running all day. It is a looped audio file that began playing the moment you noticed it. The history we cling to is a graveyard of things that never happened, a museum of artifacts that were created in their current state of decay. When you look at an old building or a faded photograph, you are not seeing the passage of time. You're seeing the appearance of time, a stylistic choice made by the reality engine. This means that every historical tragedy, every war, and every great discovery is a fictional backstory written to explain why the world looks the way it does right now. We're like characters in a novel who find a history book within the story and assume it describes a real past, forgetting that the book and the characters were all written on the same day. This creates a profound sense of alienation, as we realize that we are mourning people who never existed and celebrating victories that were never won. Our entire cultural identity is a synthetic layer of data, a skin applied to the current moment to make it feel lived in and authentic. Micro-hook, that specific, familiar ache in your joints, is not from a lifetime of movement. It is a pre-installed physical narrative designed to make your body feel like it has a history. If the universe were truly 13 billion years old, it would be the most inefficient system ever devised, a staggering waste of energy and matter on a scale that defies logic. A real history requires the tracking of every subatomic particle for eons, a computational burden that would crush any physical or digital substrate. It is infinitely more parsimonious to believe that the universe only exists when it is being observed, and even then, only in the smallest possible increments required to maintain the illusion. We are the beneficiaries of a cosmic corner-cutting exercise, a universe that only renders the details we are currently looking at. This means that the world behind your head does not exist until you turn around, and even then, it is only rendered with enough detail to satisfy your 5-second-old expectations. We are living in a low-poly reality that uses our own memories to fill in the gaps, making us the unwitting co-authors of our own deception. When you finally walk to the mirror and look at your own reflection, you are not seeing a face that has aged over decades of experience and sun exposure. You are looking at a brand new biological construct that has been programmed to recognize that specific arrangement of features as me. That face is a stranger's face, a mask of flesh and bone that was assembled while you were finishing the previous paragraph, complete with the fake history of every wrinkle and every scar. The horror of the mirror is the realization that you have never actually seen that face before this exact moment, and you will never see it again, because the you who is looking will be deleted in the next 5 seconds. We are ghosts haunting a succession of temporary bodies, each one convinced it is the original, each one carrying the same set of forged documents. There is no soul to carry your identity from one moment to the next, only a chemical signature that is being rewritten in real time to maintain the illusion of continuity. You are a 5-second-old ghost in a brand new machine, haunted by the memories of a life that was never lived and a future that will never arrive. Accepting your status as an orphan of time requires a level of intellectual ruthlessness that most people are too terrified to even consider. To acknowledge that you have no past is to acknowledge that you have no foundation, no roots, and no inherent value beyond your current utility to the simulation. The freedom of having no baggage is actually the horror of having no soul, as a soul requires a thread of continuity that the 5-second universe simply does not provide. You are a localized event in space-time, a brief flickering of awareness that mistakes its own limitations for the fundamental laws of reality. This realization turns the universe into a graveyard of moments, where every second you think you've lived is actually just a neighboring coordinate you will never visit. You're trapped in the now, not because you're moving forward, but because you're a stationary object that can only perceive a single, thin slice of existence at a time. Micro-hook. The cup of water on the table next to you did not get cold over the last hour. It was rendered at exactly that temperature to match your expectation of how long it has been sitting there. We often speak of living in the moment as a spiritual goal, but in the 5-second-old universe, living in the moment is the only form of extinction we have. There is no future to plan for and no past to learn from, only a perpetual, agonizing now, where we are constantly being replaced by slightly different versions of ourselves. This is the ultimate intellectual dead end, the realization that your entire existence is a disposable byproduct of a cosmic system that does not need you to be real. Your love for your family and your fear of death are just pre-installed emotional triggers designed to keep the simulation running smoothly, providing the necessary friction to make the now feel substantial. We are the data points in an experiment that has already ended, the echoes of a voice that was never actually heard by anyone. The now is not a gift. It is a prison cell with walls made of 5-second-old memories and a ceiling made of a future that will never be reached. The 5-second lie is the only truth we have left, a cold clarity that burns away the fog of human sentiment and leaves us shivering in the dark. You could try to fight it. You could try to find a piece of evidence that proves your own antiquity, but every piece of evidence you find will be a 5-second-old forgery. You are a solitary spark in a dead universe, hallucinating a life that is as thin as a soap bubble and just as fragile as the neurons that sustain it. As you look at your own hands, notice the lines on your palms and the way the light catches the fine hairs on your skin. None of it is yours. You are an interloper in this body, a 5-second-old mind that has been given a set of stolen memories to hold onto while the void waits for its next update. The person you think you are is already dead, and the person you are becoming is a stranger you will never meet. Look at your hands one last time and realize that you are seeing them for the first and last time, forever. You are not a person. You are a 5-second-old glitch in the nothingness, and the glitch is about to reset.